In a decision that could have far-reaching consequences for the balance of power in the United States, a federal appeals court has delivered a ruling that is already sending shockwaves through the legal and political landscape. The case centers on presidential authority, particularly regarding the enforcement of immigration laws, and the outcome could fundamentally reshape how future presidents wield their executive powers. On February 6, 2026, the Fifth U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals, based in New Orleans, upheld a controversial Trump administration policy that allows for the mass detention of undocumented immigrants without the possibility of bond. This decision marks a dramatic departure from decades of established legal precedent, where non-citizens who did not have serious criminal records were often permitted to seek release while their cases moved through the courts. Now, many face indefinite detention, regardless of their individual circumstances. By granting the executive branch significantly broader authority to enforce immigration laws as it sees fit, the ruling has ignited a fierce national debate. Lawmakers, legal scholars, and activists are now grappling with the implications for the separation of powers and the potential erosion of checks and balances. For the Trump administration and its supporters, this is seen as a major legal victory, a validation of their approach to immigration enforcement, and a green light to pursue even stricter policies moving forward. The decision, reached by a narrow 2-1 vote, highlights a judiciary that appears increasingly receptive to strong assertions of executive power. Legal experts warn that this could set a precedent for future administrations to expand their authority in other areas as well. At stake are not only the rights of individuals caught in the immigration system, but also fundamental questions about the limits of presidential power and the protection of civil liberties, issues that are now at the very heart of the national conversation and will likely shape American democracy for years to come. In 2025, a sweeping new policy was introduced that dramatically changed the landscape of immigration enforcement in the United States. This policy directs federal agencies to detain undocumented immigrants automatically, regardless of their criminal history, length of time in the country, or deep community ties. It marks a significant departure from previous practices, where individual circumstances were often considered before detention. One of the most controversial aspects of this policy is the elimination of bond hearings. For decades, bond hearings provided a crucial opportunity for many immigrants to argue for their release and reunite with their families while awaiting court dates. Now, that process is gone, leaving thousands in legal limbo and families facing prolonged separation. The Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals recently upheld this policy, giving it the force of law in Texas, Louisiana, and Mississippi. These states are home to millions of undocumented residents, many of whom have lived and worked in their communities for years, raising families and contributing to local economies. Under the new rules, even long-term residents and parents of U.S. citizen children can now be detained indefinitely. They have no opportunity to argue for release, regardless of their personal circumstances or the hardship their detention causes their families. Previously, lower courts had blocked the policy, citing serious concerns about violations of due process and constitutional rights. Judges argued that denying bond hearings stripped people of a fundamental legal safeguard. The Fifth Circuit's reversal is a pivotal moment in the legal battle over immigration enforcement. It sets the stage for a likely showdown at the Supreme Court, where the fate of thousands and the future of immigration policy could be decided. The practical effect of this policy is profound. People could spend months or even years in detention, separated from their loved ones, unable to work, and with no access to judicial review. The emotional and financial toll on families is immense, and the uncertainty can be overwhelming. Civil rights groups and immigrant advocates warn that this ruling could have devastating and far-reaching consequences for immigrant communities across the country, fueling fear and instability for countless families. The majority judges, Edith Jones and Kyle Duncan, argued the executive branch has broad authority to enforce immigration laws. They said past leniency doesn't bind current administrations. Presidents can choose stricter enforcement. The opinion claims federal law gives the government power to detain non-citizens, and bond hearings are a matter of discretion, not a legal right. The judges dismissed thousands of lower court rulings against the policy, framing their decision as correcting judicial overreach. Their view courts shouldn't dictate immigration policy, but interpret laws as written, granting the executive wide latitude. This sets a precedent for future presidents to pursue aggressive enforcement, expanding the executive toolkit. The The ruling marks a significant victory for those favoring a stronger presidency. In dissent, Judge Dana Douglas warned the ruling allows unprecedented, widespread detention and strips individuals of due process. She argued that eliminating bond hearings erases a core safeguard of the American legal system. The policy, she said, doesn't distinguish between new arrivals and long-term residents risking years of detention for people with deep U.S. ties. Douglas called the system cruel, costly, and inefficient, filling detention centers with people who pose no risk. She highlighted the break with legal precedent, arguing the majority ignored constitutional protections for all persons. Her dissent frames the issue as one of fundamental rights, not just executive discretion. Douglas's warning: this precedent could justify even more extreme government overreach in the future. The ruling's immediate impact will be felt by immigrant communities in Texas, Louisiana, and Mississippi. Millions now face the threat of indefinite detention, turning routine encounters with law enforcement into life-altering events. Families risk being torn apart, with breadwinners suddenly detained and children left in crisis. The loss of bond hearings removes a critical safety valve, pushing people further into the shadows and making them less likely to seek help or report crimes. The policy could also disrupt industries reliant on immigrant labor, causing labor shortages and economic ripple effects. Detaining thousands more people will require massive taxpayer spending on facilities and services. Critics argue these resources would be better spent elsewhere, as the policy drains both families and public funds. The Fifth Circuit's decision is a turning point in the debate over presidential power. By affirming the administration's authority to radically alter enforcement, the court signals a shift toward a more powerful executive. This interpretation could affect not just immigration, but environmental, economic, and other federal policies. The ruling aligns with the unitary executive theory, giving presidents broad control over federal agencies. If this view prevails, each new administration could bring sweeping, unpredictable policy changes. The decision sets a precedent for defending controversial actions and expands the president's reach. As political divisions deepen, the question of presidential power is more urgent than ever. The Fifth Circuit's decision creates a circuit split, making Supreme Court review almost certain. Other appellate courts may rule differently, increasing the pressure for a final, nationwide answer. The stakes: the Supreme Court could either cement a major expansion of presidential power or reaffirm due process rights for millions. A ruling upholding the policy would allow indefinite detention nationwide. Overturning it would restore bond hearings and limit executive reach. The legal process will take months, but for now the Fifth Circuit's ruling stands in 3 states, creating a patchwork of laws. The outcome will shape the separation of powers and individual liberty for years to come. This Supreme Court case will be one of the most consequential of the term. While immigration dominates headlines, another Supreme Court case is quietly testing the boundaries of presidential authority. This time, in the realm of tariffs and economic power. The outcome could have sweeping consequences for the balance of power in Washington and for the global economy. The Trump administration imposed billions of dollars in tariffs on imported goods, citing the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, or IEPA. This move was intended to protect American industries and address perceived threats, but it sparked a wave of legal challenges from importers, manufacturers, and trade groups who argued the president had gone too far. The central question before the court is whether the president overstepped constitutional limits by using emergency powers to enact sweeping economic measures, bypassing Congress's traditional role in setting trade policy. The case raises fundamental issues about checks and balances, and the scope of executive power. If the Supreme Court rules against the tariffs, U.S. companies could potentially reclaim billions in duties and bond costs paid over the past several years. This would unravel a complex financial web, impacting not only businesses but also the government's approach to economic emergencies. The customs bond market, a crucial but often overlooked part of international trade, exploded in response to the tariffs. Bond requirements soared, and many importers received notices that their bonds were insufficient, creating uncertainty and financial strain across the industry. A Supreme Court decision could not only reshape U.S. trade policy, but also have ripple effects throughout the insurance and financial sectors, as insurers and brokers adapt to new legal realities and risk calculations. Together, the immigration and tariff cases highlight an executive branch that is testing the outer limits of its authority on multiple fronts, raising questions about the future of presidential power and the role of the judiciary in checking it. Ultimately, the Supreme Court's decisions in these cases will help define the balance of power between the branches of government for years to come, shaping the nation's legal and economic landscape in profound ways.